You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Time. Actually, I had someone today, when I do a reading for review, someone was like, "What's wrong with your voice?" It's like, I haven't stopped talking for a whole week.
It's true.
Welcome, everybody. It's Minute to Skim It. It's when we tell you what is coming out this week. Spoiler-free, little reviews, not very opinionated, except for we'll tell you if you like it or not, but it's mostly so you have information that you need to choose the books this week. And there were some killer books this week.
Literally, there were books where people died.
So many.
So many people died, too.
And mutants as well.
I don't know about any mutants. I didn't get to read anything about any mutants.
Yeah. I think there's an important book out this week that people are going to be
I'd like to be able to read books about mutants, but I just get books about immortal Keanu Reeves.
I mean, it can't get much better than that.
I don't disagree with that statement. Ironically, it's like my fourth favorite book this week, or third favorite book this week. But like, it's immortal Keanu Reeves. I'd much rather read about mutants.
We'll see if we can get you.
We'll work on it.
Review copies, because I feel like we should be able to get review copies to you.
We'll work on it.
And Kenneth Bird's in the house. Hello, my friend. How are you doing? Hope life's treating you well.
Cool.
All right. I think I've got maybe twice as many as you.
Something like that. You've got a giant stack, and I've got 10, 10.
I overachieved. So it may not be that bad. If you have 10, we'll go you and me, and you and me until we get to the end, and then we'll get crazy.
Yeah, I have like 10.
Okay, I am going to talk about Per Evil first. The hardest named book to say this week.
Is it pure? Is it supposed to be pure evil?
It
says per. Like, is it? Yeah, like it's a pun. So it's like per evil, man. Per evil. She per evil.
See, ship. It's a coil. Everyone can't have enough coil.
It's true. And ship can't escape me.
Nope. Cool gamers on too, man. All our best friends. Thanks, y'all. It makes us. You have no idea how good it feels to have people like our reviews and appreciate them. And coil. That's right. All right. Okay. So this one is Mirka Andolfo's newest thing. It is still from Image, and I think it's super creative how they did the logo with little paw. But I will tell you that they don't get around to the kitty part of it until the very end, which makes me low-level angry. Okay, so most books I can wrap my mind around where they're going or what kind of book I'm reading pretty early on. And this one, I'm still a little bit lost. This is what I caught from it so far. It appears that, it starts out with a bunch of murders, since we were talking about dead people. Bunch of dead people, and it's mostly about this woman here who I don't know is acting like the parent of this person right here, who's adorbs, super cute. And most of the book is really kind of about a funeral that everyone goes to, an awkwardness behind that. Who's dead. These people tend to move around a lot, from what I can gather from the story, that they only stay around in a place long enough so that people can't figure out who they really are, which I still don't know, having read the first book. So that's good. Good mystery going on. And it appears perhaps that this young person that appears to be a young girl may have a very murdery ability that maybe she's not even aware of. So it kind of defies genre. I don't know. Not true crime. It's not cute kitties. It's something else. It's good. It just is not quite defined yet for everything. Hey, Peg, how you doing?
All right.
Glad to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
Jen, would you mind doing one more book while I deal with an emergency for the experience, and I'll do 2 when I get back?
Take care of it.
All right.
Okay. I'm not going to do that one then, because that was one that I know he'll be interested in. All right. This one was so good. This is What If Dark Spider-Gwen. So they had one last week also, another What If, and that one was pretty good one. This one knocks it out of the park. This one's got a really cool Greg Land cover on it, and it doesn't ever have this costume. So don't think you're getting to that costume. It's not happening. The What If that they put out in this starts out with the first 4 or 5 pages, the original story. I don't even know if they actually just physically copied it over from the Death of Gwen Stacy issue, or if they recreated it. But it has the same look and feel as that old book. And this one, instead of her being the one that dies, Pete actually saves her. And instead, Pete dies, which creates her having to kind of like step into the role of a spider person. It's a different kind of origin than we're used to, and it's so good. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that this version of Spider-Gwen that comes out of this continues on as a character, because I think that Spider-Gwen herself actually started out as kind of like a what if kind of character, and then she became a thing. So that's what I'm hoping happens here, is that they take whatever was born from this, her character born from this, and actually use it. So way to go, Jerry Conway and Jody Hauser. Loved it. Not a throwaway book. Definitely feels like should be part of main universe stuff.
All right. So should I start with my What If book?
Sure.
Or should I start with a book that I'm not sure about?
Whatever you feel, man.
Okay. So this is What If a Wookiee was Santa Claus, basically. Or what if they had written this to be the Star Wars holiday special?
Okay.
Probably wouldn't be banished to the nether realms of the internet. So Star Wars Hyperspace Stories number 6 is the story of Greedo kind of making his bones in the Hutt gang, right? Greedo is I hate myself for what I'm about to say. Greedo is a very green little space alien at this point. He is not the Greedo who is still very green, but gets his head blown off by Han in the movie. Hashtag Han shot first. He captures a Wookiee who is a toy maker, and Jabba takes advantage, is the premise of this story. I think this should have been the Star Wars holiday special. I really do. I think it should have been, Wookiee Santa, kind of thing. But this is it's a fun little funny story that's not super serious in the Star Wars universe. But at the same time, it features a lot of the characters you like from the original films. So, fun time. You don't have to have read a single previous Star Wars Hyperspace Stories to understand what's happening. It might help kind of get an overall flow for the series, but this issue stands by itself in that regard and is super fun.
I love it when they do that, because, it's tough every week to buy everything.
Right.
But if you love Star Wars and you're like, I feel like I need a Star Wars hit this week.
Right. And we talk about that. I'll talk about that with another book later. I'm from that camp of every book should be able to be somebody's first.
Mm-hmm.
And this is you showed your kids last weekend because it was so hot. You showed them the original trilogy for the first time and they're like, we need more. This is that.
That's a good voice. Hey, Reef, how you doing, man? Welcome.
All right. This is Seasons Have Teeth number 4. I don't know what happened in Seasons Have Teeth 1 through 3. even
Oh,
though
no.
I read them.
Is it that confusing? Or it's been too long in between issues?
Neither. There is a story here that I think needs to be read in one shot.
Okay.
I think breaking it up into individual stories makes things intentionally too vague. So the premise of the book is that each of the seasons are a monster that
Ooh.
kills people, and this main character is a photographer who has to get pictures of the monsters. Why are we making some sort of twisted wildlife documentary? I don't know. It's never made clear. Like, is this the wackiest calendar shoot ever? I don't know. And that's the part that drags me out of this. I don't understand the motivations of the main character to do what he's doing. He's been through some trauma and he's obviously coping with that in his own way. But it's not clear, and it's like Dan Waters wanted you to make assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
and my brain doesn't let me make normal or rational assumptions, so I just don't.
So
And
it
so
hasn't made any connection, like his family was killed by the seasons previously, or
maybe that's the problem, is that because I had to read them month by month,
mm-hmm.
I don't see the through line that way. So what I will say is each issue is very interesting independently. Like this one is winter. And so anybody who has a relationship with winter, I would imagine maybe not so big for those of you in Texas. But if you have a relationship like I do with winter, this might hit home. And I really do think that it needs to be read in collected form or in one shot. It'll make those through lines clearer. So that's on me for not being able to draw those lines. But here's the seller. Sebastian Cabral, who is the artist on this book, is a freaking wizard.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how they do what they do with the watercolors and the pastels and the washes and the ink wash and the wash and all of this stuff that creates these insane layers in this art that is just so stunning. I would have quit reading this after issue 1 or issue 2 if it wasn't for the art of Sebastian Cabral. This is a buy it now for no reason other than the pretty pictures. Like high point of art is happening here in this book. And if reading all of the issues together or in a trade or something solves that Kyle's brain is a little not normal and can't follow things in the storytelling, this has the potential to be a book of the year candidate. But it just, right now, I'm struggling with the story because my brain is not drawing the lines it needs to draw. So, very, very pretty book, though.
Ooh, nice. All right. I delayed reviewing this one since you were like having regrets about not knowing the things about mutants. And this one's an important one.
Ooh.
Okay. So, Fall of X. This is the Heckfire Gala issue. This is the third one of these. They happen once a year, so it's kind of like instead of being an annual, this is the state of what's going on for the X-Men. And so important because it's all tied to that major storyline that Hickman's been doing. Even though Hickman's not writing in this book, you wouldn't notice at all because the creative team that's on this is so good at just being like, yes, this is the big story. Okay, so for people that don't understand what the Heckfire Gala is, every year the mutants on Krakoa have gathered together to announce, vote for, or create a new X-Men team. And it's always been kind of interesting because, of course, you've got all of the mutants that you possibly want to choose from that are part of this event. Everyone dresses up in really awesome clothes, and the art is stunning in this regard. There's many costumes in here that I hope that cosplayers are inspired by and actually make. And the only other thing you need to know is that all of the mutants anywhere are now either on Krakoa or Arakko, and they have formed their own sovereign nation. They've used parts of the island itself to make medicines that can heal all cancers or any of the big things that humans have been facing. And to that end, they've kind of like said, if you want to have access to these things, you have to acknowledge this as a sovereign nation. And the only other thing you need to know is that if a mutant dies, they can be resurrected. So they remake their body, and then Prof X can download your last known save in Cerebro, which he's been doing secretly forever, and download you to the new body. By the way, they can download whatever version they really like of you most. So there's a lot of ethics.
Dislike.
Very weird ethics here.
Yeah, that seems morally questionable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit. And also a thing you need to know is that there's ties to the death of Miss Marvel in this book. And you should think about what I just said in that regard.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. So the big stuff that happens here is that there's been an organization called Orcus that's been secretly plotting to try to take down these, mutants that are like, all the mutants, bad and good, are working out pretty good together, although everyone has their agendas still, of course. And in this book, I will just tell you that immediately after the announcement of the new team comes giant tragedy. And this book ends on a very, very dire note. The mutants no longer are going to be the strong group that they once were, if everything that's happened in this book sticks. Big time changes. Don't miss it. Like if you've just been like, I don't know where to start in the X-Men or just the mutant universe, all the X titles, if you jumped in here, you would know enough with the information I've given you to go from this point forward and be fine. I think there's going to be some huge moves going on that are going to affect almost all the X books. So do get it.
All right. I will do Rivers of London. Here Be Dragons.
This is the one with the doggies, yeah?
Doggies?
Oh, no, I'm thinking of a different one. Never mind.
Yeah.
There's another one that has a similar name. There's like dogs that do investigations.
No, right. No, this is Rivers of London. Here Be Dragons. So what Rivers of London is a long running series in the sense that they're individual miniseries, but there's a ton of them that are out there. Ben Aronovich is sort of ironically like the Jonathan Hickman of the Rivers of London universe. He created it, although Hickman didn't create the X-Men, but he kind of created this Rivers of London universe and oversees it, even though he's not always writing it. It's kind of like Hellboy meets the X-Files meets Supernatural meets Doctor Who, with, in this case, some Game of Thrones because of dragons. That's the only reason, dragons. But the idea is that your main character is this magic user, supernatural protector of the city of London. Very much the way Doctor Who is, except with magic. So maybe he's a little bit John Constantine in that regard. There's a number of people you could kind of slot into that personality trait. But he's also like a cop and is solving mysteries. So there are dragons. Why are there dragons? What has brought the dragons here? And trying to solve the mystery of why there be dragons. And this is the first time we see dragons in London. In the past, they've had characters like almost like Ratcatcher from DC. Mm-hmm. Other things that are more Whovian in nature, but so the story will follow him as he tries to, one, deal with dragons in London, and two, figure out why there are dragons there. And this is the first story in which the dragons and a helicopter are not friends. So if you don't know anything about Rivers of London, this is a great place you can jump in on. It certainly helps to have that backstory, which can be literally Googled and Wikipedia'd, and you'll get enough backstory to understand it. You don't need to go back and read the other 20 volumes or something. But it certainly wouldn't help if you had, or hurt if you had. Like, the more information you have about these characters, the better, but you don't need any to be able to pick this up and start in the Rivers of London universe. So
action. All right, we're gonna give more Hickman love here. Ultimate Invasion, number 2. All you need to know about this book series is that Hickman is writing a whole new Ultimate storyline, not touching the old Ultimate books. So if you're thinking to yourself, oh, we already did Ultimate before, this is totally new ground, totally new characters, totally new outcome. Everything is going to be its own thing. The Maker is the main character here. That's the not tied to any universe or future or whatever of ours. Reed Richards. So very only for himself. Super smart. He could look outside our timeline, his timeline, all timelines, and figure out what's the best move for himself. And in this issue, he is trying to outsmart the superheroes that are not already under kind of his control. So there's a list toward the first of this book that actually goes through and lists like Doctor Strange and Captain America and Incredible Hulk and all those characters to say whether they're dead, because he insinuates that he's moved things around a little bit to make sure that they say that 4 astronauts may not have had their launch go off on time, so then they were not exposed to certain cosmic rays, so those characters don't exist, and some of them are actually dead. So you've got some characters that are, he says, like controlled or influenced, dead. So it's kind of interesting to read the list and what's going on for him. And he, in this book, actually figures out through looking at genetics who currently exists in the timeline that's related to these. There's a bunch of future heroes that are coming back to try to stop him. They're trying to find how far back do they have to go to stop him specifically. Problem is he can see everything, so he knows what's coming. And so he makes first strike, and I'll let you guys read to figure out what that first strike looks like. It's really, really good stuff.
All right. As I scroll to find the information that I need for my next book, there it is. We're gonna do Grim Fairy Tales number 74. And I kind of told you last week that every week I will tell you, because Zenescope puts across the top how many pages of content, I will give you my review of the pages of content. 22 pages is 10 pages too few of content. Like, only because I believe in that last 10 pages they could have gone somewhere. This is a book that starts off nowhere and ends nowhere. Doesn't really move the story anywhere, doesn't really have any sort of anything in the story that feels relevant to anything. But what you have is you have 3 really cool characters in Snow White and in Jay, you got to help me. I'm forgetting the names because I'm really bad at names.
Red Agent?
Yes. And who's the other one?
I know the Musketeers are in it too.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last person.
Yeah, so you wind up with your best characters, I think, that Grimm has. And it's just a long action sequence, which is super cool. Don't get me wrong. I love a long action sequence in a comic book. But the storytelling became almost secondary to the action here, which maybe that's where this book needs to be. I don't remember issue 73 at all. So it's possible that this is just the next natural progression in the story, and I'm forgetting the previous issue. But you have 3 characters in a great action scene, and you don't do any storytelling with them. So this is a book that read and pick up if you're reading this ongoing series, because you definitely, the battle is important.
Mm-hmm.
The battle is super important if you're reading this ongoing series, but this isn't a book that could be anybody's first. You can't, this is not one you could jump into and start picking up Grimm fairy tales. Like, and this is the first time you've ever read Grimm fairy tales ever in the history of forever. Like, maybe that's the next book, because that seems like a possibility coming out of this book.
My recollection is, aren't they heading to a big story climax involving Cthulhu-esque things?
Yeah, but there are no fish people in this.
No fish people in this. No.
Right. That's the problem. If there were fish people, you'd be like, okay, see, this is a book that ties into this other thing that they're doing, but they're not. So the battle is certainly important, and it changes the structure of the group going forward, but they don't tell you where they've been, and they don't end up anywhere different. So it's this kind of weird sort of stall that features this battle. Super cool if you're reading the ongoing series. Not great as a jumping in point. I will also say this, and this is me copping to my experience is going to be different from other people. The PDF we got was not rendered well.
Oh,
So
no.
there were entire panels where I couldn't read the lettering because it was blurry. So it's entirely possible that you go to your local comic shop and pick this up and go, Kyle is on drugs. And no, Kyle is just only partially informed.
That makes sense. All right. I'm going to talk about Incredible Hulk number 2.
I'm very excited for this book.
It's just because I can't ever remember the two bad guys' name. It's sister someone and brother someone. There's an elder god bad guy that is got a real excitement for wanting to control the Hulk. And there are other characters that have been introduced. There's a little girl named Charlie, which we're unsure what her connection is otherwise. But there's a gathering of monsters that's happening. It seems very like, if you've ever read any of the last 2 or 3 storylines for the Hulk, you'll see that monsters tend to be a regular character, like furthering for this. So it's not unusual to have them. So it's Sister Sadie and Brother Deep are these two like leaders of, it almost feels like a weird zombie cult. And they are the ones that are after the Hulk to control him. And weirdly, the Hulk is trying to, his aim is to excise Banner out of him. He wants to only be Hulk. No Banner. And Banner it has been a long time since there's been an actual human Banner walking around. So he's human Banner walking around and is successfully kind of like, and we haven't seen, I don't think, the Hulk out of him. I don't know if he was in number 1 at all. So this one kind of ends in a really crazy place that'll feel a little bit maybe like Civil War 2 number 3 for y'all. For anybody that knows their comic books, pick it up.
I just want to know when Bruce is going to learn that this never ends well.
It will never end.
It never ends well when you try to separate yourself from the Hulk.
And I don't think
when you try to rejoin the Hulk.
Yeah, I don't think either of them realizes that I don't think they exist independent of each other, however desperately they want to.
Right.
I think whatever happens on the page does not matter. It's incidental.
Right. This always ends in so much death. Speaking of death, no, I'm kidding. We'll do Scar. This is Disney Villains Scar from Dynamite.
I love those hyenas so much.
I do too. And if they had called this book Disney Villains, the Hyenas from The Lion King, it maybe would have been a more descriptive title. And it would have counted towards that trend of having incredibly long comic titles. This is a prequel to the Lion King film. This book has walked you up from Scar's point of view to right where he does the thing prior to the Timon and Pumbaa of it all, where, you know, he ascends to the throne under the dubious circumstances that are him ascending to the throne. Again, I don't feel like Scar is a great representation of this story because it really isn't about him so much as it's about the other characters that make him him. So the hyenas and the bird and the, you know, the other characters that were involved in all of that. To me, it doesn't feel like The Lion King. It doesn't feel like it's written in the same voice or tone as a Lion King story should be written. So it's got this weird sort of other feel to it that I don't necessarily know that I love, but it's been very interesting to see this prequel story that isn't really a prequel. It's kind of a happening over here on the side story from this beloved children's movie. And so that has been really good. I think of the 4 current Disney properties Dynamite is working with, I think Darkwing Duck and Maleficent are the strongest. And I think Gargoyle and this are suffering from trying to do new as opposed to just focusing on being great at what already happened.
Just as a heads up, there was a big announcement at Comic-Con about the next Disney property that is going to be tackled by Dynamite, and it's one that you guys are going to go crazy about. It is Nightmare Before Christmas. So
right,
the last time we've had anything from that is from Tokyo Pop, and they've been slow rolling out a series called Zero.
Right,
this is the main universe stuff.
Yeah, I will say this is the last issue in this series. It is a fun little standalone on the side. So if you can pick up all 4 issues, definitely do it or get the trade of this. And when you remember Lion King as a kid, like how fondly you remember it from whenever you agreed or read it the first time, this is for when you're like, you know what I want? The nostalgia of the Lion King that speaks to my current little emo heart. This is that book.
It's a good description. I like that one. All right, I think this is my last Marvel read. I've been following Amazing Spider-Man pretty closely because I just like the storyline and what's been going on. This is number 30. To catch you up, there's been a lot of body sharing / exchanging between Peter Parker and Dr. Ock. And this, like, they're not ignoring all of that back history. It's actually building on itself. So when last we saw Peter, J. Jonah Jameson had been connected to the Doc Ock arms, or a version of the Doc Ock arms, and the arms seemed to respond to Peter. So he put on those arms for himself and actually had them integrate with himself, which is like they tap into his spinal cord, and so he can actually think thoughts and they do what he wants. And the other thing you need to know is that Osborn is fully bad and trying to bring back the evilness out of our good friend Green Goblin, who has been trying to be good. He's exorcised all the evil from himself, is what he says, basically. And so this is Doc Ock fully poking at bears to try to see if he can get Osborn to go bad again. And some really cool tentacle fighting, if that makes any sense.
Well, it's the only cool tentacle thing we can talk about on the air.
There you go. Tentacle fighting. It's good. It's the storyline is continuing on, and I like where it's going.
Okay. Pathfinder Wake the Dead #2. This book reads like a story retelling from a D&D or a Pathfinder campaign. You know, this is what we did, and this is how we did it, and this is who we attacked, and this is when we attacked them. Fred Van Lente and I are very different game masters based on the things that he is choosing to do And I don't know if he's playing all the parts in his head or how he's doing this, but it's what it feels like he's doing. And he is making decisions as a game master that I would not make. And that makes this very interesting. The story is cool. You're dealing in this Pathfinder story with a necromancer, and the things that go with being a party having to deal with the dead rising from the ground and trying to, kill you. And so you have these characters that are really fascinating characters to begin with, and are characters that I'd like to play, facing a villain that they don't necessarily interact with all that often, which is super fun because it means you can stretch or condense as much as you need with that villain. It does feel a little bit in this story like that thing where your D&D campaign kills a character that you intended to use for several sessions the very first time they see them.
Oh no.
And you're having to kind of pivot a little.
Yeah.
So you're making a necromancer to be like, oh, actually that guy was a zombie. So
you can use them anyway.
Yeah, it feels a little like that. But it's a super fun read, especially if you're into RPG. And guys, the thing about this book that for me is the big seller is the RPG character options that are included in every issue. So I can read this book and take these character options and say, here, guys, you want to play a game? And it's these characters that we can go read books about now, which is super fun and interesting. That more than anything is a selling point for me. But the story is very good. The art is very good on top of it. So it's just a plus situation.
Brilliant. Brilliant. All right, my next two books are some of the best art I have ever seen in comic books. The first one, well, they're both Scout books. That's really crazy. Scout Comics. This is Talon, Seed of Darkness. I think they put out the ash can for this book pre-pandemic is my recollection of it. And I remember reading the ash can and saying, that looks dope. And then I forgot all about it because it took so long for the book to come out, and it's not their fault. It's just the way it worked out. Now, it has down here is in the creator spot, Brothers Harrow and Burnish Shadow. If that's their actual arty names, that's dope.
Yeah, those are good pen names.
Yeah. So this is, I'll just say it's magic, vampires, and maybe a little bit of werewolf if they were done by a manga Disney arm. This is like the simplest of the art here, and it is I can't even explain it. If you had the very best of Disney, go real dark, a little bit anime. It tells the history of the you think you're learning about Vlad the Impaler, but it's not that. It's a Vlad that actually hunts down witches, and then it comes forward in time, and it looks like the magic users and werewolves and vampire folk have been at this for a very, very, very long time. It has no relation at all to Vlad the Impaler storyline. Trust me. It is the best. Now, I'm going to do this one to back to it. This is Space Outlaws. I actually watched Carter
Very excited for that.
I'm really sorry. Working on this. He actually posted on pretty much every page on his Facebook page / Instagram or whatever when he was working on it. He's out of Italy, so I always try to interview him, but he can't. He doesn't speak the English, which is I wish he did because I would love to interview him.
You just need to learn Italian.
I do need to learn Italian. It would be worth it in this case. So it is exactly what it says. It is Western sci-fi. It is an uber bad alien prisoner who escapes and forces. They really are. They're Martians, but not the way you're used to it. Deciding that they have to free what is probably just as dangerous to go and hunt down this creature. imagine if you took the very best space western, mixed it together with Terminator. Can't think of what, like Aliens, and I don't. The art style is different than anything that you are used to. This is the art style of the book. It's all this detailed, all this beautiful. So I think it's a 3-color book, just like it looks like on the outside. And it's both written and drawn by Marco. It is a masterpiece of a thing.
All right. Let's do Vampirella versus the Superpowers number 3.
What a great cover.
Right. I am not someone who has an interest in Vampirella and not someone who has an interest in the Superpowers. But when you team them up, oh my God, it's like campy Archie meets violence and vampires. And it's not scary Archie, it's campy Archie. It's let's get in the jalopy and go to the malt shop. Except it's Vampirella and the Superpowers. Like, the thing that this series does really well, and I can't really talk about what happens in the book without just plot pointing it. But so often we find from companies like Dynamite and others, when they get some of these series and they're really popular, they start taking them super seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks some of the fun out of the characters. This is infusing all of that fun back into Vampirella. And it's kind of going with a, oh, gee, mister, kind of, superpowers, Shield in the 40s kind of feel. And it's working out really well. The art style that they're bringing to it is super cartoony and super fun. It's not like they're trying to over-sexualize Vampirella in the book. It's some of these things that can sometimes be a turnoff on a character like Vampirella don't happen. And so that in and of itself is incredibly worthy of note. But overall, it's a fun little, vampires versus, superheroes kind of teaming up against each other, mishmash of who's who in this universe, all tied together without any real serious repercussions. And it's just fun.
I love that. Very, very cool. My brain's gonna short. It's when you read too many back to back. Okay, the next one I'm talking about is Charm City, and it's got I remember now. Okay, so for fans of true crime, there's murders afoot. So the main character of this book that we're introduced to first is a cheerleader for, I can't remember what team. Some team you'll recognize, sports ball. And kind of starts out with them. They're out having fun, weirdly watching football at a bar. It's like, why aren't they at the game? I'm not certain. That's actually brought up in the book, so it's not just me thinking these things. So the writer was smart enough to know. They were going to be like, what's going on? And it turns into a murder mystery, like an actual serial killer murder mystery, where it's not just the cheerleader or one of the cheerleaders, not that one, that gets murdered, but it pulls in this main character that you see on the front cover. She's actually a sports writer, and she just happens to be hanging out with her girlfriend, who is another cheerleader, that they find themselves across from the marina from a body being pulled out of the water, and they can see that they have a cheerleader outfit on. So she calls her editor and says, hey, you should head down here real fast. You're going to get a scoop. And he's like, nah, you do it. So she, by crazy circumstance, ends up becoming the person who's reporting on this. And what you find out is that someone is out trying to kill what is secretly, I believe, people that have magic abilities that are kind of living amongst us without anybody knowing. And that's as much as I know about who's doing it. You kind of see them in shadow, and that's it. So it's a cool mashup of genre, which the true crime part is the part that gets me.
007 for King and Country.
Gorgeous.
Daniel Warren Johnson is a madman. I don't know if in his office he's got like push pins in a wall with string tied around him like a serial killer connecting all of the dots in the story.
Maybe.
But you certainly need one when you read it. Because everything is so interconnected, and who has betrayed who, and who is turned, and who is a good guy and who is a bad guy, and who's working for who and who's on the right side. It gets really hard to follow. And it's great because it's that classic James Bondian mystery, right? Where you never know exactly who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. Is the Bond girl in this issue actually a double agent, or is she telling the truth, or is Bond a double agent and is he telling the truth? Or Philip Kennedy Johnson. What did I say, Jay? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I would say the same thing about Daniel Warren Johnson. Anyway, Philip Kennedy and Daniel. If you're three names and your last one is Johnson, you're a genius. Take that. No, he just has tied everything so interwoven and so interconnected that in this story, you don't know who to believe is telling the truth. And you don't know how Bond is going to figure it out. Thank you, Forrest. Thank you, Forrest, for getting the joke. Just super fun, super great storytelling. And there's like very little action in this book. There's some, but very little action for a James Bond book, which is, I think, when these stories are at their best, when it's really digging into you, going, you don't know what you think you know. This does that in spades, and I'm really excited to see what comes out of the next part. Just so you know, if you read the previous volume of James Bond, the previous miniseries, they do tie together. This is a continuation of that series in a second miniseries. So just be aware of that if you're jumping in, that you won't know what's happening, and that's how they want it.
You sounded just like Dr. Teeth for half a second.
Well, Keaton.
Groovy. All right. This is the kind of book I usually pick up and don't like because it looks like superheroes and giant things, but this is totally turned my mind around about such things. There is room for things that are kind of superhero-y. They're actually not superheroes at all. This is from Band of Bards. This is told in 4 chapters. They have chapter breaks and they tell you what's been going on. It is brilliant in that way. So it is about mostly this girl right here who you meet as a baby, and it is clear that there's something very special about her from the action that happens, and then it jumps forward. So all of these characters are tied to gods, the previous gods, and it looks like they're genetically reproduced versions of them. And in their world, it looks like they all live on maybe a giant starship that's got infinite amounts of levels. And there also exist things that are like, I would kind of equate them to like celestials for the Marvel universe. And they don't know how to turn them on. All that knowledge has been lost to them. So they must have been traveling through space for a very, very long time, generations and generations. And in this book, they figure out how and who can activate these things and what the implications are. And it has a really cool, like, if you like the way that Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is, where eventually things combine to make one giant thing, that is the way this rolls out. And it's really, really good. Again, I'm telling you, normally I would look at this book and the cover and be like, no, that's not me. But I really loved it.
All right. Ironically, not my favorite book of the week.
Can't believe it. He looks just like he's wearing the outfit from that Vlad the Impaler wears. And
this book was fantastic.
Fantastic.
I didn't read a single issue of Volume 1 of Berserker.
Oh, wow.
I got them. I just didn't read them. This happens before that. And Steve Scrosey, I don't know how to say his last name, but I want to talk to him about this. This is, again, when I've talked about this a lot, every book should be able to be somebody's first. You don't need to have read any Berserker before to understand or read this. This is actually a prequel. Great storytelling, great violence. There's some good humor in it. Really just a fun book. I will say this, there are some scenes where like you can see through the Berserker because of the whole being immortal thing.
Oh yeah.
That I didn't really need at 10:30 this morning when I was reading it, eating my breakfast. But super fun. The one note I would have is that, guys, you don't need to keep the red paint industry in business with one book. There's a lot of blood. Super fun. Good action, good storytelling. And it's got the peaks and valleys that you want in a story. Action at the beginning, storytelling, action, storytelling. So very excited to see where this continues to go. The one thing that is the reason it's number 2 is that the thing that the Berserker has to fight is one of those things that's a little played out. It seems to be in every book from every publisher now. And it starts with the end, and it starts with a C and ends with Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
They use it well, but it's like, really, you couldn't come up with something else? Come on, Keanu.
I think that maybe a lot of these books were in development before each other knew they were doing that.
It's been years though now where everybody's doing it. Like it's, and that's it's fine because I don't think that Cthulhu is going to continue through the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
So to have them as a one shot is cool, but it's just that's the one knock I have on this book is that it's like, oh, okay, we're jumping right in issue 1 to fighting an elder god. Got it.
By the way, I saw a car as I was leaving the airport. It was like a black car that they had everything blacked out about it. So it didn't have any other, like it didn't say Toyota or whatever. Who knows what it really was. But they had in letters across the back, the one above all.
Nice.
And I've never been more happy.
By the way, and I said this on the last show and I'll say it again here. Having not read volume 1, I'm not going to. I'm going to wait until they're done with Berserker so that I can read it in order. So if this is the first Berserker story and then that's the second one, if they do another one that's after, I want to be able to read it in chronological order.
Oh,
which
I think you should. So
which I think will be super fun.
Because the first series wasn't in chronological order itself. Like
right.
In each issue, it would give you a little bit about how far back his origin was. And you'd be like, okay, well, I really don't know how far back it goes.
Right. But it'll be interesting to be able to, when it's all said and done,
Mm-hmm.
put them in order, machete cut it to put them all in order that this is the order that these things happened in. I also, though, the art in this book has got me so ready for the anime.
Mm-hmm. How ready? All the readies?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Ribbon Queen, this is Garth Ennis. If you loved his work on A Walk Through Heck with Aftershock, that kind of like, I'm not 100% certain how much mystical stuff is going on and how much is just straight up bad guyness. This is a tale about I feel like she might be part of the police department. That like, what's that part that like, if somebody within the department does something wrong, that they call them out? People that everybody hates. I cannot remember what they're called.
Internal affairs.
Oh, internal affairs. It doesn't really say that about her. I don't know what else she could be. Maybe a reporter, but it's her going to, I believe my opinion is either it's the head of the newspaper or the police chief. I need to go back and make sure which one it is. Doesn't matter. Someone with authority, and saying, do you remember that the murder that happened X amount of time ago? He says, yes. He goes, that woman has recently been murdered. And it appears that the person that's involved in that was the officer that came and rescued her from this serial killer. So, because there is actual video that someone has captured of an interaction, I guess the police officer or SWAT guy has been kind of following her around. And the idea is that maybe he thinks he's owed more from her than just thank you. And it's gotten ultra awkward. And it becomes very difficult. Like police folk are very closed in the way that they mete out justice among themselves. And this has made it real awkward amongst them. So
cool. All right. My last one is Alice in Neverland, #1, by Dan Panosian and Giorgio Spalletta. You have to have read volume 1 to kind of fully understand volume 2. In volume 1, you realize that Alice is a person in the Victorian era who's suffering from mental illness and drug addiction. Because at the time, the way you dealt with drug addiction was do a little laudanum about it. At the time, the way you dealt with mental illness was do a little cocaine about it. So she is a person who has lived through the trauma of mental illness, the trauma of drug addiction, and then the trauma of the terrible treatment she received from the people who were supposed to be helping her, who didn't necessarily, some of whom who didn't know any better, and others of whom who were just malicious. Volume 2 picks up after that story where Alice is suffering. You find out very early on, pretty clearly, she's suffering from a complete mental break. She has compartmentalized herself to protect herself from the trauma. And so, again, her mother and father, her family don't know what to do because she's not eating. She's not there. She is living in her brain in what they call in this book Underland, because I don't think they can call it Wonderland, but right. Underland, which is where all of these characters exist. And you learn in the first volume that all of the characters either represent something in her real life, that this is the way she's coping, or a thing she's trying to avoid. So the Cheshire Cat and some of these things, the bad guys in Neverland or in Wonderland, are things she's trying to avoid. So in this book, you spend a lot more time in Underland than you had spent during volume 1. But this is what's happening in Alice's mind. And then it cuts back to what's actually happening in real life that she is registering as having happened. But because of the mental break she's on, she can't really frame it in a normal way. So it happens in Underland. And this issue is her chasing the white rabbit. So you have to kind of read it and see what that means for Alice and the characters of Underland and real life Victorian England.
Beautiful. All right, I'm going to do 2 books really quickly, just so you guys know what you're getting into. There's a new Batman Beyond, Neo-Gothic. This one takes our character, Terry, who's Batman, into the Under-Gotham, which has its own rules and crime structure and those kinds of things. It's very, very cool. I've never actually read any Batman Beyond things, and I'm going to have to go back, I think, and read some because it's a pretty rich universe. I like it. And then this one, which is My Little Pony Camp Big Hoof. The ponies are going to summer camp and they freak each other out a little bit. Everything is hearts and rainbows like usual, but they freak each other out a little bit by telling a story about this scary character. Imagine like a Bigfoot version of a pony. And then things go sideways at the end of camp. They get trapped. What happens next? We'll have to find out for the next issue. Do you have any more? You're done?
No, I'm done.
Okay, perfect. We got it just in time. Thanks, guys, so much for showing up for a Minute to Skim It. Use this knowledge for good. Go to your local comic shop and pick up some really awesome comic books tomorrow. Show them some support. You just go by and at least tell them that you love them. If you can't afford books right now because of the economy, just share their post on social media so that your friends can go and know that they're awesome and they'll feel the love from you. We'll see you guys next week on the experience here, Minute to Skim It. Bye, y'all.